What if I told you that before the age of 30, one man had already conquered most of the known world and never lost a single battle? It sounds like a legend, but it's real. His name was Alexander the Great, and his story is not just about war. It's about courage, learning, and believing in yourself, even when the world seems too big. Let's begin. Alexander was born in 356 BC in a place called Macedonia. This was part of ancient Greece. His father was a powerful king, and his mother told him something very important from a young age. She said he was special. She told him stories about heroes and gods. She even said he was connected to a famous hero named Achilles. Imagine growing up believing you were part of something great. That belief stayed with Alexander his whole life. But being special is not enough. You have to prove it. When Alexander was about 12 years old, something happened that people never forgot. His father bought a strong, beautiful horse. But there was a problem. No one could ride it. The horse was wild and scared. Many grown men tried to control it, but they all failed. Young Alexander watched carefully. He didn't see a dangerous horse. He saw a frightened one. He noticed something others missed. The horse was afraid of its own shadow. So Alexander did something simple but smart. He turned the horse toward the sun, so it couldn't see its shadow anymore. The horse became calm. Then Alexander climbed on and rode it. Everyone was shocked. From that moment, people knew this boy was different. The horse's name was Bucephalus, and it stayed with him for many years. As Alexander grew older, he didn't just train his body, he trained his mind. His teacher was Aristotle, one of the greatest thinkers in history. Aristotle taught him about science, nature, medicine, and philosophy. Alexander loved to learn. Even later, during wars, he carried books with him. His favorite was a story about heroes and battles. He didn't just read it, he imagined himself inside it. He didn't want an ordinary life, he wanted a legendary one. At just 16 years old, Alexander got his first real test. His father went away to fight a war and left him in charge of the kingdom. Think about that. A teenager leading a country. Soon, enemies attacked from the north. They believed a young boy would be easy to defeat. They were wrong. Alexander quickly gathered an army. He moved fast, and he won. That was his first battle, and it wouldn't be his last. 2 years later, at 18, he fought beside his father in a major war. This time, Alexander led the cavalry, the soldiers on horses. He didn't just follow orders, he made bold moves. His courage helped win the battle. People started to see him not just as a prince, but as a leader. Then, everything changed. When Alexander was only 20 years old, his father was killed. Suddenly, he became king. But becoming king was not easy. Some people didn't trust him. Others wanted power for themselves. Some cities even tried to break away from his control. Alexander had a choice, wait or act. He chose to act. He moved quickly and showed strength. He led his army to the rebellious cities and brought them back under control. One city refused to listen, so Alexander destroyed it completely. It was a harsh message, but it worked. After that, no one dared to challenge him. Now, Alexander was not just a king, he was the leader of all Greece. But he wasn't satisfied. He wanted more. He remembered his father's dream to conquer the great Persian Empire. At that time, Persia was the most powerful empire in the world. It was huge, rich, and full of people. Most leaders would be afraid. Alexander was not. In 334 BC, he made his move. With around 40,000 soldiers, he crossed into Asia. This was the beginning of a journey that would change history. Soon, he faced his first big battle near a river. The enemy was waiting.
The river was deep and dangerous. His generals told him to wait, but Alexander didn't. He charged forward. He rode straight into the water on his horse. His soldiers followed him without fear. The battle was hard. At one moment, Alexander was almost killed. A soldier attacked him, but his helmet saved his life. Then his friends stepped in and protected him. In the end, Alexander won. That victory opened the door to Asia, and it was only the beginning.
After that first victory, something interesting happened. Alexander didn't rush forward without thinking. Instead, he moved carefully along the coast, capturing one city at a time. Some cities welcomed him peacefully, others resisted, but they all eventually fell. He had a clear strategy. By controlling the coastal cities, he weakened the enemy's navy. This was not just about fighting, it was about thinking ahead. Step by step, he was building something bigger. During this journey, he arrived at a place called Gordium, and here he faced a different kind of challenge, not a battle, but a mystery. There was a famous knot, known as the Gordian knot. It was said that whoever could untie it would rule all of Asia. Many had tried, all had failed. Alexander looked at the knot for a moment. Then, instead of trying to untie it, he pulled out his sword and cut it in half. Simple, bold, unexpected. This moment tells us something important about him. He didn't always follow the rules. He created his own solutions. Not long after, in 333 BC, Alexander faced one of his greatest challenges. He met the Persian king himself, Darius III, in a massive battle. The battlefield was called Issus, and this was no ordinary fight. Darius had a much larger army, some say hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Alexander had far fewer, but numbers don't always decide the outcome. Alexander studied the field. He noticed something. The enemy army was crowded. They didn't have enough space to move freely. That was his chance. At the perfect moment, he attacked. Not randomly, but directly. He led his cavalry straight toward Darius. It was a risky move, but it worked. When Darius saw Alexander coming toward him, something unexpected happened. He ran. The king of the largest empire in the world turned and fled. And when the leader runs, the army follows. The Persian soldiers lost hope and escaped. The battle was over. Alexander had won again. But what he did next surprised many people. He captured Darius's family, his mother, wife, and children. Instead of harming them, he treated them with respect and kindness. This was not just power. This was control. This was leadership. After this victory, Alexander had a clear path to the heart of Persia, but once again, he didn't rush. He turned south. Why? Because he understood something important. To truly defeat Persia, he needed to control the entire region. So he moved into Egypt, and something very different happened there. He wasn't seen as an enemy. He was welcomed. The people of Egypt were tired of Persian rule. To them, Alexander was not a conqueror, he was a liberator. They accepted him as their ruler. Even more than that, they called him a god king. During his time in Egypt, Alexander visited a special place, an oracle in the desert. This was where people believed they could speak to the gods. The message he received was powerful. It said he was the son of Zeus, the king of the gods. Whether it was true or not didn't matter. Alexander believed it, and belief can change everything. It gave him even more confidence, more purpose, more fire. While in Egypt, Alexander made another important decision. He founded a new city. He named it Alexandria. This city would later become one of the greatest centers of learning and culture in the ancient world. Even today, it still exists. Now, Alexander was ready. He turned east again, toward the heart of the Persian Empire. In 331 BC, the final and most important battle was coming. Darius gathered a massive army once again. This time, he chose a wide, open battlefield near a place called Gaugamela.
This location was perfect for his large army, his cavalry, and his deadly war chariots. Everything was ready. On one side, an enormous empire. On the other, a smaller, disciplined force led by one man. Before the battle, many of Alexander's soldiers felt afraid. It made sense. They were outnumbered, they were far from home, and they were facing one of the largest armies in history. But Alexander remained calm. He studied the battlefield carefully. He made a plan. And when the battle began, the Persians attacked with full force. They sent chariots with sharp blades designed to break through enemy lines. It looked terrifying, but Alexander's army did something clever. They opened gaps. The chariots passed through without causing damage. Then came the moment Alexander was waiting for. He saw a weak point in the enemy line, just a small opening. That was enough. He formed his cavalry into a sharp arrow-like shape and charged straight toward Darius again. And just like before, Darius ran. That was the turning point. The Persian army collapsed. The battle was over, and with it, the Persian Empire.
With that victory, everything changed. Alexander was no longer just a rising leader. He now controlled the greatest empire on earth. He entered famous cities like Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis. These places were rich, powerful, and full of history. In Persepolis, something symbolic happened. Parts of the royal palace were burned. Some say it was revenge for past Persian attacks on Greece. Others believe it was a mistake. Either way, it showed something important. Alexander was not just building, he was also destroying. At this point, he was around 30 years old. He had achieved more than most people could imagine in a lifetime. But he still wasn't satisfied. He wanted to go further. He pushed east, moving through harsh lands, mountains, deserts, and unknown territories. He entered regions that are now called Afghanistan and Pakistan. These were not easy places to conquer. The land was difficult, the people resisted, the battles were different. But Alexander kept going. He also kept building. Everywhere he went, he founded new cities, many of them named Alexandria. These cities helped spread culture, trade, and ideas across continents. But there was a problem growing inside his army. His soldiers were getting tired. They had been fighting for years. They had traveled thousands of miles. They missed their homes, their families, their old lives. Still, Alexander pushed forward. Eventually, he reached India, and here he faced something new: war elephants. He fought a strong and brave ruler named King Porus near a river. This battle was different from anything before. The elephants were huge, loud, frightening. But once again, Alexander adapted. He found a way, and he won. But what he did after the battle is just as important. Instead of punishing Porus, he respected him. He allowed Porus to remain a king and even made him an ally. This shows a different side of Alexander, not just a conqueror, but a leader who understood respect. However, something was about to change. For the first time in years, Alexander heard a word he was not used to hearing: no. His soldiers refused to go further. They stood at a river and made their decision clear. They were done. 8 years of war, endless marching, constant danger. They had reached their limit. Alexander was not happy. He believed there was more to conquer, more to discover. At first, he tried to convince them. Then, he became silent. He stayed in his tent for days, thinking. In the end, he made a decision. He agreed to turn back. This was the only time Alexander did not get what he wanted, and maybe one of the most important moments of his life. The journey home was not easy. In fact, it was one of the hardest parts of the entire story. They crossed a terrible desert. The heat was extreme. Water was scarce. Many soldiers did not survive. Even victory has a cost. Finally, they returned to Babylon. Alexander chose this city as his capital. He began making new plans. He wasn't done dreaming. He wanted to explore new lands, build more, and expand even further. But something unexpected happened. He became sick. At first, it seemed small, a simple fever, but it didn't go away. Day by day, he became weaker. His soldiers came to see him one by one. These were men who had followed him across the world, men who had fought beside him. Now they were watching their leader fade. After about 10 days, Alexander died. He was only 32 years old. His death shocked the world. A man who had never lost a battle lost his life too soon. To this day, no one knows exactly what caused his death. Some believe it was disease. Others think it was poison. The truth remains a mystery. After he died, something else happened. His empire, so large, so powerful, did not last. His generals began to fight each other. The empire broke into pieces. But Alexander's impact did not disappear. He had connected East and West in ways never seen before. He spread ideas, language, and culture across continents. His cities became centers of learning and trade, and his story lived on. More than 2,000 years later, we still talk about him. Why? Because his life teaches us something powerful. He shows us what belief can do. He believed in himself when others doubted him. He pushed forward when things were difficult. He thought differently. But his story also reminds us of something else. Even the greatest leaders are human. He was brave, but sometimes too bold. He was kind, but sometimes harsh. He achieved greatness, but paid a price. In the end, Alexander's journey is not just about conquering lands. It's about exploring limits. It's about asking, how far can I go? And maybe more importantly, when should I stop? That's what makes his story unforgettable.